Welcome back to the Delaware Way. Here's some good news. Delaware is one of the top states in the country when it comes to emergency preparedness. Here to talk about that is Tricia Wachtendorf, who is an associate professor of sociology at the University of Delaware and director of the Disaster Research Center. And Sarah Davis is a radiological emergency preparedness planner also at DEMA. Thank you so much for being there. Man, your titles are a mouthful. So how do they rank? How do they figure out that we're one of the tops in the country in emergency preparedness?
Well, this is an exciting way to actually examine the way states are doing, both relative to each other and also for states to look inside their operations and see areas that they're doing really well in and areas that they need improvement on. So there are about 139, I think it is, measures that go into the preparedness index. Often these are measures that the organizations involved in the study itself can draw from national data sets. They send questionnaires to states to get information. So these are really indicators that are consistent across states and they can actually use as a benchmark to compare each other. Emergency
preparedness is such a broad term. And there's all kinds of emergencies. Is it broken down in this survey?
So it doesn't necessarily focus on specific types of hazards or types of disasters. Again, it's focused on health, but it's looking at whether or not in a health capacity we're more or less prepared for terrorism, natural disasters, epidemics. The different categories that they look at have to do with information and incident management. For example, the way organizations can communicate with each other and their readiness to really deploy resources. Things like environmental and occupational health, health delivery, health surveillance, a lot of surveillance factors. And one of the really important aspects is also looking at community planning and engagement, those relationships that we have between organizations.
I saw that Delaware is supposed to be lacking when it comes to environmental and occupational preparedness.
So that area actually has to do with the surveillance of environmental hazards, both in terms of the hazards that we might face in our local communities, our exposure to it, but it also might be related on an occupational level, the exposure to our first responders and people in occupational areas. So that's one thing that we didn't really do that well on. And I think Sarah can speak specifically to some of the efforts in the state, but one thing to keep in mind is the limitations of that data collection. So, for example, there's one of the questions that they asked about the state's public health laboratories engaged in their capacity to actually monitor certain, to engage in certain surveillance. And one of the things about Delaware, and actually Oklahoma is another one that's mentioned in the study, we don't have our state public health labs engaged in that activity. We have a different facility that engages in that. So that's not going to capture some of the good things that we are doing, but certainly there's areas for improvement.
We have a really strong partnership on the state level with the different entities that we work with. For example, DENREC or Public Health, the Department of Agriculture, making sure that they have all the resources that they need. So on a citizen level, we do have the strongest program in the country, and it's been recognized at the White House for the past 3 years, actually.
When you say a citizen's effort, I don't want to get the words wrong, but what are you talking about specifically?
So,
I mean, a militia?
Yes. No,
really?
We don't have a militia. We have a citizen corps team, and basically we work with the public, our neighborhoods, the responders before the first responders, who can walk next door and make sure that their neighbor's okay if a tree falls on the house. And we offer programming for volunteers to come to our facility and train on fire and rescue on the basic level.
So
we
it's
can
how
offer
well
support.
trained the population is? Is that part of it? Is that what you're talking about? Is that we have a population in Delaware that can handle emergencies better than other populations?
I'd say yes.
Yes?
Maybe I'm biased because I love the state, but
No,
I'd
but
say
it's
yes.
extremely important. I mean, if God forbid this would ever happen again, but I take my mind back to 9/11, and there were first responders, but there were a lot of citizens that had to help out, and they seemed to be prepared, and they were told what to do, and they were able to form a fire line, and they were able to move debris, and they were there to volunteer. So I know how important that is.
And right now, Delaware very much leads the way in making sure that our citizens are prepared for those kinds of emergencies, from flooding in Sussex County to some of the high winds that we get up north. We have a team of folks who make sure that we're offering that kind of community training and community awareness, and they are leading in the country right now.
But the bottom line in all of this is this should make us feel good, that the state is prepared for just about anything.
It should, but there's a lot of room for growth. So one of the things that the study says is that across the country, the changes that are occurring are happening very slow. Sluggish is actually the word that they use. So some of the investments in terms of the surveillance, in terms of being able to understand if there's a problem in our water, in our environment with pollution, thinking about some of the epidemics, Zika, for example, Delaware did an excellent job, but there are certainly ways that we can invest better, increase communication across agencies to make that stronger. So there is areas for improvement.
And I'm really intrigued by the citizen planning. Is there a place that people can go to if they want to be trained? There is?
Absolutely. Citizens can check out dema.delaware.gov, our DEMA website, or preparedde.org. Both of them will send citizens to the training locations and lists of everything that we offer. So they can come into our training center and learn more about what they can do before the emergency responders come in.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you both for being here. Tricia Wachtendorf is the Associate Professor of Sociology at the University of Delaware and Director of Disaster Research Center, and Sarah Davis, a Radiological Emergency Preparedness Planner, also at DEMA. We're coming right back.